The way we buy and sell homes in America, it's all governed by this powerful, kind of hidden set of rules. Well, one of the biggest, most fundamental of those rules, a policy that's shaped the industry for decades, just got tossed out the window. So let's break down this massive shift and figure out what it actually means for, well, everyone. Okay, so to really get why this is such a huge deal, we've got to ask a simple question. Who's in charge? I mean, who's writing the playbook for how millions of homes get bought and sold every year? Turns out, it really comes down to two key players.
All right, first up, you've got the National Association of Realtors, or NAR. Think of them as the mothership. We're talking about a massive trade group, over 1.5 million members strong, that sets the national standards and policies for pretty much every realtor in the country.
And then there's the MLS, the Multiple Listing Service. This is the tool of the trade, right? It's the essential private database where agents list homes for sale and see what's on the market. But here's the key part. These local databases have always operated under the big umbrella of NAR's national rules. All right, so now that we know who's who, let's get to the main event. What's this big, long-standing rule that just got wiped off the books? So at their recent big conference, NAR got together and, kind of behind closed doors, voted to just shred one of its most important policies. I mean, this was a rule that has been the bedrock of the industry for years and years. And this change is profound. It really is. The old rule was super simple. If you wanted to get into that all-important MLS database, you had to be a paying member of the National Association of Realtors. Period. No exceptions. Well, now, that national mandate is gone. Access is now a matter of local discretion. The power has completely shifted. So what's the official word from NAR on this? Well, their past president, Kevin Sears, he framed it as a move to strengthen and modernize their policies, to get things aligned with how agents work today. But that's the official story. And there's a much, much bigger reason behind this whole thing. Which, of course, begs the question, why? Why make such a huge fundamental change, and why do it right now? Yeah, this was definitely not just some simple administrative update. The real motivation, the main driver behind this entire policy shift, it all comes down to a single, very powerful word. And that word is antitrust. See, NAR is getting hit with a ton of lawsuits, claiming it operates like a monopoly to keep costs artificially high. So by getting rid of this mandatory national rule, they're making a really strategic move to lower their legal risk and kind of shield the national organization from these lawsuits. So the number one goal here, it's all about legal protection. If there's no national mandate, it's way harder for someone to argue that NAR is running a nationwide monopoly. And hey, as a nice little bonus, it also reinforces this idea of local control over local markets. Okay, so this brings us to the practical side of things. What does it actually look like when power shifts from one big national group to hundreds of little local ones? This phrase, local discretion, it really just means that the decision-making power now lands squarely with your local MLS board. Each and every board gets to vote and decide for itself if it still wants to require NAR membership for agents to use its database. Now, here's the really crucial part to understand. This is not a nationwide ban on requiring membership. Not at all. A local MLS can absolutely decide to keep the old rule in place if they want to. The big difference is that now the decision and all the legal responsibility that comes with it is on them at the local level. And get this wasn't just some one-off change. This huge policy repeal was actually just one of 17 updates they made to the MLS handbook. It's all part of this bigger push to modernize and, you guessed it, decentralize. For instance, they also ditched this old, rarely enforced rule that made local groups report anyone who asked for MLS access without being a realtor. And they even got rid of an ancient, outdated rule from the 90s about how an MLS has to be named. I know, they sound like small changes, but they all point to the exact same theme. Less control from the top, more power for the locals. Okay, so after all of that, what's the big takeaway? Let's boil this whole thing down to the bottom line. So let's sum it all up. The control over who gets into the MLS, that's moved from one single mandatory national rule to hundreds of different local decisions. National oversight is out, local control is in. And really, the most important thing is that power that used to be held tight by NAR is now being spread out. This is a fundamental restructuring of how the entire industry governs itself. It's a big deal. And that leaves us with one last really fascinating question to think about. We've got this huge shift in power, right? All driven by legal pressure. So as these hundreds of local MLS boards start to flex their new authority, what other pillars of the real estate industry could start to wobble? What's the next domino to fall?